Queefing? What's queefing?
Queffing?
Queffing? No, there's no R.
Queffing?
Queffing? Anybody know what queffing is?
Queefing.
Already explored this issue a while back in episode 3, Trans as a Choice. Here we are again, because this remains a popular talking point around media, public discussion. For some reason, I find the way the Peterson brothers handle this particular issue as exceptionally frustrating. Oh, my Peterson brothers. I mean Jordan.
First of all, the idea that gender identity is independent of biological sex is insane.
Yeah,
it's wrong. It's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The scientific data they're not only clear, they're clear beyond dispute.
And good old Jesse Lee.
Racism does not exist and it never existed. There was a lie made up by the children of the lie.
The issue, of course, because you know how to read the title, is gender and sex and how the difference is anything but rocket science. My limited perspective makes me feel like I'm in some kind of Twilight Zone listening to someone make a flat earth argument or something when I listen to this binary understanding of sex and gender. So, let's explore them. To my understanding, gender is like the roles in a play. We all play roles in this play of society, down to dad jokes and standing up for the lady. All most likely different approaches to sway our significant other or potential partner into attempting procreation. Stereotypes are another example of roles in society. With movies and other cultural influences spreading roles, more people fill them in self-fulfilling stereotypes. You all can think of a million examples right now. Man and woman are two very broad categories of cooperation roles in our society. But obviously there is more to it, as masculine men exist, and feminine men exist, as well as masculine women exist, and feminine women exist. So you can keep breaking it all the way down to the particular individual. It is really just how one feels, because eventually something about the role we want to play is different from the role that everyone else wants to play. The possibilities are essentially endless. Sex, on the other hand, is biological. It can be seen in DNA and is expressed physically. In the most basic sense, there is male and female, but sex can be blurred and even potentially be changed. There are other species who can change sex, and it is very likely to be possible in humans as well. One misunderstanding we have is the thinking that the fate of whether an X or Y chromosome was first place in the race, the ultimate sperm race, determined the expression of sex. But that concept is not really accurate. Like most concepts we have, we are generally trying to explain something we do not or cannot understand, and we get by with whatever works for us, and thus we avoid reality entirely. Now, the science part about sex appears to be well understood and not in any serious contention. The dictionary defines sex as either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and many other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions. Additionally, those such as the Peterson brothers who get confused on sex and gender point to things that are quote-unquote inherent and in the genes, as sex is most certainly a factor and is in the genetic code. So our problem must come in the use of the word gender. There are tons of problems when discussing gender. This is how the dictionary defines gender. The state of being male or female, typically used with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. Wait, what? How can you say on one page that male and female are biological sexes, then on another page call them gender, but not biological ones, cultural ones? Merriam-Webster. Get it together. It then goes on to state, traditional concepts of gender, that the synonym of gender is sex, that variables include age, income, and gender, that gender is the members of one or another sex, and that differences between the genders are encouraged from an early age. And all of that is an absolute mess. And I'm quite surprised at the negligence of our resources, but as I say that, I see how silly that was to think and inconsistent with my own beliefs. But it is not like the Peterson twins discussed this as if it is confusing, so I still question their goals. But here is a little hope in the usage note in dictionary.com, which states, and I'll insert something to distinguish when I stop reading in a second.
Put your whole face over that. Yes, there. Do it like you mean it. She meant it.
Although it is possible to define gender as sex, indicating that the term can be used to differentiate.
God damn.
Start that off. Although it is possible to define.
Damn.
Again. Although it is possible to define gender as sex, indicating that the term can be used differentiating male creatures from female ones biologically, the concept of gender, a word primarily applied to human beings, has additional connotations, more rich and more amorphous, having to do with general behavior, social interactions, and most importantly, one's fundamental sense of self. Until recently, most people assumed that acknowledging one's gender or sex was easy. You just check the appropriate box on a standard form, choosing either male or female, according to the gender you had been assigned at birth, based on visible anatomical evidence. But some people's internal sense of who they are does not correspond with their assigned gender, and in fact, we are now recognized that a complex spectrum between male and female exists not only mentally, psychologically, and behaviorally, but also anatomically. There have always been biologically intersex people. Gender identity is complicated. Some people, perhaps most, do not question their assigned gender, but others perceive themselves as belonging to the opposite sex. Still others, some of whom identify themselves as genderqueer, see themselves as neither male nor female, or perhaps as both, or as rotating between genders, or even as not belonging to any gender categorization at all. Those who clearly see themselves as the opposite sex may not want to transition into some measure. Of those who do, some may complete that transition, but others may be happy to stop partway on a path that can include dressing and behaving like the opposite sex. Although the desire to cross-dress can exist quite apart from the issues of gender identity, somewhere along the transitional path, people may want to change their given names and adopt linguistic terms of their choosing, including a variety of pronouns as designations of themselves and others. But some will have hormone treatments and opt for various kinds of surgery, perhaps facial, perhaps on their bodies, or perhaps ultimately including sex reassignment surgery or genital reconstruction. At any point, they may welcome or reject a transsexual or transgender label. This array of life experiences has resulted in a veritable explosion of new or newly adapted vocabulary. Particularly striking and useful is the word cis, or prefix cis as in cis male, cis female, and cisgender, designating those whose sense of self matches their assigned gender. Using cis is a way to refer to these individuals who have, without implying that cis people are the norm and all others are a deviation from normal. It is notable that choices of gender beyond male and female are even beginning to appear on social media sites. Clearly, gender is no longer a simple binary concept, if it ever was.
When I do it, I really feel like the muscles here in my neck seem not as tight. And I see a lot of benefits for it. But, yeah.
I totally lost track of what you were talking about.
I know. And then sometimes, but when we're up here, we just get so like, what? What were you saying?
Now, I do not quite see the transgender argument the same way, and please reference episode 3 for that thought and believe. And I believe that Dictionary.com is confusing gender while they attempt to clarify gender for the very same reasons of cognitive dissonance that others express. There is no such rational thing as transgender. Changing your sex, transsexual, which is obvious in their own argument. The desire to alter one's body is entirely separate from a gender discussion. But anyway, we should be on the same page and also understand how the issue gets confused. In the end, society is the play, and most of us wear masks to that play and fit roles for others to accept us or to meet their expectations of us. Gender is a confusing way to try and conceptualize one of the roles that we act out in that great dance of humanity. All of the roles can change and be rewritten and do not necessarily maintain the same definitions, despite keeping the same name. For example, contemporarily, we see the concept of being masculine as tough has moved into taking down a lot of those walls that made men mask themselves to fit the limited definition of gender at that time. Our cultures blend and overlap in many plays within play. So, if you really like your play, in an Obama fashion, you can keep your play. But I cannot think of much less that is less American, and thus does not fit into the main act, in forcing your play onto others. Live and let live. It reminds me of the whole concept of being homophobic. How the fuck can you be homophobic and not at least be bi? I mean, seriously. I have zero concern that people can get skin piercing. I cannot stand how it feels, and I have no desire for it. Now, if I wanted it, but my wife or my family would not let me have a piercing, well then, I can see how it is human to develop an animosity towards those who can have them. Inequality in the face is detrimental to the human mind in a variety of manners. But ask yourself, or whomever, how can you be upset about the role that someone else gets to play, unless that is a role you desire and a play you enjoy? Drop the mic. C squared out.
That's what it's about.
Oh, then let's do that one.
All right.
Coming to Broadway this season, Pussy Farts, the musical.
Ever since then, I've been like, fuck that.
Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You're cool. Fuck you. I'm out.
This has been produced by Teddy Bear Chola Productions for iMemberMedia.com.